Hello and welcome to Films for the Very First Time. My name is Jordan, and with me, as always, is Casey McGeorge. How are you today,
Oh,
Casey?
how's it going, everybody?
Doing good. Doing good. Our first of the bye week. Well, Suicide Squad was the first of the bi-weekly, but our first time really diving into how far these episodes are going to stretch now. Like we were doing the math since we're so far ahead. Like some of these are going to be premiering like a month later. So, uh, pretty wild. Pretty wild.
Yeah, so just a reminder to everybody too. When we talk about these films and TV shows and things, at the time we record these are the streaming services that they're on. Unfortunately, we all know streaming changes pretty quickly, so
Yeah.
stuff can pop on and off for at any given moment in time. So hopefully, with everything that we pick as we start going forward, these things are on the same streaming services, but they can change pretty quick. Like,
And usually I'll double check when I post the episode. So make sure you look in the description as well because I usually, before I post, we'll make sure they're in the same spot. But yeah, it's a quite the time of the world right now. Which it's nice that you can just easily watch them on your TV, but sometimes it's so hard to find some of these movies that you think are like classics. Yeah, so
yeah, we were just talking about one we're looking at doing, and it's at this point it's not available to stream, but unless you go for some weird obscure streaming service. But
yeah. Yeah, but you think some of these would pop up on like the Tubies and where it's the free ones with the ads. Like I feel like some of these movies would end up there at some point, but we'll see.
yeah, that or I don't know, just that's why I'm really getting back big into my physical collection again, just
Yeah,
because of that stuff.
same. Yeah, I usually end up buying the movies I like the most, even though I know that they'll most of the time be available for streaming. It's nice to be able to know for sure. And then I don't have to worry about buffering or any, bad quality and stuff. So,
Well, you can still get bad quality depending on the disc and the transfer.
yeah, yeah.
Especially like I got Weird Science in on disc yesterday, and it's through like a I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's not. I don't know if someone different owns the rights, but it's through like a third party company that actually made the disc.
Really? Was it like Shout? Shout like buys so many of these rights to put out there.
I it's I can let me see if I can look it up real quick because it's the the whole when I was looking at it was just weird. I haven't watched it yet. I'm probably gonna pop it in at some point here soon. Not that one. Okay, it's a special edition for Weird Science, but it's
Oh,
wow.
I
You can still
see.
buy it on
Arrow
VHS tape.
is it Arrow
Yeah, Arrow
Video?
Media. Yeah, you can still buy it on VHS tape on Amazon. That's weird, but okay, sure, why not? Yeah, Arrow Video. I don't know anything about them.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, let's look those up, huh? They're uh cult
horror
classic
movies.
movies, yeah.
I might have to start looking at some more of their stuff. I don't know, but
Yeah.
UHD's 2 for $60, limited editions,
Yeah, you get a lot of
Arrow
companies
exclusive.
like this now too that'll like this and Shout and stuff that makes it a big thing to try to get rights to some cult classic stuff that can, make money if they're limited edition or whatever. So
Flash Gordon, Waterworld, Donnie Darko. These are the 2 for $60 UHD deals.
interesting.
Flatliners, Pitch Black. I RoboCop. Wow, the original RoboCop. Okay, I might have to start going through some of their stuff.
Yeah.
Wild Things. This is limited editions. Tremors 2, Last House on the Left from 2009, True Romance.
Yeah, wow. All right. So what movie are we talking about this week?
All right, so we are gonna go to 2005. Um, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think this movie would have hit a lot of people's consciousness or like came into their realm if it wasn't for the controversy that came after that we found out about afterwards. We're going to talk about Mr. and Mrs. Smith, starring Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. Now, the controversy is that at the time Brad Pitt was married to Jennifer Aniston. Not long after the movie was shot, there were rumors that there was a connection and there was an affair that was had between him and Angelina Jolie on set. Wild speculation and rumors, I don't know. Eventually, they did end up together and they were married for quite a while. And I will say, after like that kind of piqued my interest. Like the premise of the movie and the concept of the movie piqued my interest in the first place. I thought, that doesn't sound like a bad idea. Add the controversy, and then when word started coming out, like, oh, you can see the chemistry between the two in the movie, I was like, okay, you got me hooked. Let me see this. And then when I watched it, that's when I was like, oh, there might have been something to some of those rumors. I don't know. But
That's funny.
Mr. and
Not to
Mrs.
give too much away here, but I guess with all that hype of it, I didn't see that much. Like it wasn't as they didn't have as much chemistry as I thought they would have after hearing all this.
I don't know. We might have looked at it in a different way, but we'll get there. We'll get there. All right. So Mr. and Mrs. Smith, released June 10th of 2005. A budget of $110 million with a box office of 487.3. Directed by Doug Liman, who did Swingers, The Bourne Identity, Go, Jumper, Edge of Tomorrow, and American Made. Written by Simon Kinberg. Starring, as we just said, Brad Pitt as John Smith, Angelina Jolie as Jane Smith, Vince Vaughn as Eddie, a co-worker / best friend of John, Kerry Washington as a co-worker of Jasmine, a co-worker of Jane, rather, and then Adam Brody as Benjamin Dance.
Yeah, surprised. I didn't realize Adam Brody was going to be in this.
I don't know. I don't know who he is. I don't know if I've seen him in anything else.
He's in the
What else?
OC. That's where I knew him from, and he was also in a couple episodes of Smallville, and he was in, I believe, Chuck as well, the NBC show.
Never watched any of those shows, although I heard Chuck was really good.
Chuck was really good, yeah.
And the crowd really got behind it and saved it once or twice. So
yeah, thanks to Subway.
Yeah, who knew? Who knew? All right. So Mr. and Mrs. Smith. A bored married couple is surprised to learn that they are both assassins hired by competing agencies to kill each other. So, 2005. I was in my second deployment to Iraq out of Fort Irwin here in California. I saw this movie after I got back. And it was weird. I was going through some marriage issues myself, so like the little therapy spot in the beginning, which we'll talk about, kind of got me for a second as I was watching the movie the first time. But like I said, I heard about the controversy and everything that kind of went around it. You know, being in a pop culture bubble and being inundated with stuff like that. You kind of sometimes you pay attention to those things and you can let them go, but sometimes every now and then some of those nuggets will pique your interest, and next thing you know, you're kind of following along. Where were you in 2005, Jordan? What stopped you from ever seeing this movie?
So I was turning 14. I was leaving 8th grade and about to go into ninth grade that summer. So I was getting ready to go into high school. I remember seeing trailers for this, though. I do. And it shocked me that this was a 2005 movie because it felt more recent to that. Just from, I remember the trailers vividly. Um,
It holds up pretty well. Like the movie itself holds
yeah,
up
like
pretty
you
well.
can't really tell it's 2005 until like they're sometimes whipping out cell phones that are flip phones and stuff. But
Yeah, some of the technology,
yeah,
which is either way too advanced or way behind what we have now. But
yeah. So that's where I was. What PG-13 movie wasn't really on my radar. I'm not a big Brad Pitt fan. I'm not a big Angelina Jolie fan. So this movie wasn't really on my radar. I knew Brad Pitt as mainly Jennifer Aniston's husband because I was a huge Friends fan. So I know he guest starred in an episode as well. Um,
yeah, he was the president of the like We Hate Rachel Club or something
yes,
in
yes,
high
he
school.
was. Yeah, which is funny, but now probably the truth.
Not so much. Yeah,
But yeah, so that's where I was. I remember the trailers vividly, but I don't. I do of course remember the controversy of the Brad Pitt Angelina Jolie relationship and breakup with Jennifer Aniston and all that. So, um, especially like my grandmother and stuff loved watching those like ET and Entertainment Tonight and all those type of things.
Access Hollywood
Access
and stuff
Hollywood.
like that.
That like if I was over her house at like 7 p.m. at all, like I of course heard all of this stuff. So that was that's probably that along with the trailers, the things I remember the most about this movie. I knew the plot like from the trailers, obviously that like these are
Yeah.
two, and I then I started seeing the previews for the show that I do want to check out. But yeah, so that's the most I knew of this stuff.
Look, so before we get to the movie, I haven't watched the show yet, but it is getting phenomenal reviews from everything I've seen. And I mean, it's got Donald Glover in it, so like that piqued my interest a little bit. Like Donald Glover as a mystery, like in an action movie, like I might be willing to check that out just to see. I don't think of him as an action guy, but um, in all fairness, I don't think anybody thought of Keanu Reeves as an action dude before. Like what's the last John Wick movies there, right?
Yeah, Matrix.
But okay, so there was the Matrix, but then there was like what a 15-year break between like the
Yeah,
Matrix and John Wick.
Keanu will
We was
always be Ted to me from Bill and Ted.
Yeah, and I get that. And, sometimes it's because people will hold on to older stuff like that. But sometimes you just look at people, you can't really see him as an action star. Like, okay, another one, Denzel Washington, when he did The Equalizer. Like, I never really could have thought of seeing like Denzel Washington beat people up, but then seeing old man Denzel Washington beat a bunch of people up, like I'm here for that. Now, partially, I'm 45, so I'm getting up there in age. So the idea of beating a bunch of people up at his age is always cool. But then you see someone like Denzel doing it, and you're like, I'll buy that for a minute. So I definitely want to check out the actual TV show too.
Yeah. But yeah, so
Um,
that's where I was, 14 years old.
so I'm gonna say this before we start, right? I Angelina Jolie is very attractive, right? And it's like it is whatever. But I don't know what happened recently, but I'm gonna try and keep everything to a decent level because after watching it again today, I think there was a thing for her before, and then I lost it because she hasn't acted in a while. She hasn't done a lot of things in a while. I think she's talking about moving to Africa and trying to do some more humanitarian work, which that's what she wants to do. Hey, go for it. Um,
Well, they had a
but she,
nasty
she,
split up too, Brad Pitt and her, so that'll
yeah.
probably come up.
Not only that, but I mean, she was like a UN ambassador for kids or something. So I mean, she's done a ton of humanitarian work as well. So if that's what makes her happy overall, she's got an Academy Award from I think Girl Interrupted for the best supporting actress, I think. So she's always done great work, but just oh, I'm gonna try and keep my love for Angelina Jolie. I'm trying to push that down as we're going through this movie. Just gonna might come out. That's all I'm saying. Um, all right. So, we start in the therapist's office, right? As we, I gotta admit, I love the intro. It's not very flashy for this one, right? It's not, it's just basic. You get the gist right off the bat. Two people, a couple in a therapist's office, and they're having issues in their marriage. And you get some funny parts right off the bat of, like, well, when did you guys meet? About 5 years ago. It was 5 or 6 years ago, right? Obviously playing on the trope that guys don't keep track of stuff, and women are better at stuff like that.
Which is incorrect. Okay, so I did have an issue with this because this is very stereotypical, and I can actually tell you, I recognized my wife and I met at a blind date, and we had an awkward first date. But when I left that date, I called my friend Bree and I said, "Do you have a friend named Joy? Was she at your birthday party last year, graduation party last year, whatever it was?" And she was like, "Yeah, I do." And I was like, "All right, I knew I saw this girl before. She was at your graduation party. I had met her then." Joy does not really remember that at all. So I actually remember meeting my wife first a year before. I was she called me she now remembers me because I jogged her memory with it, but like she remembers me as being like this awkward kid at this graduation party.
Did you guys actually meet and interact, or were you guys just at the same party?
We were at the same party, but there was like games going on, so we did interact throughout the games, but like I don't know if I don't remember if they were like, "Hey, this is Jordan, this is Joy," or anything. But
Yeah, was there like any one-on-one interaction or anything between the two of you?
not like one-on-one, no. So I can I understand why she doesn't remember me, but I have a really good memory, so I was able to remember that. So I always tease her about that, at how we actually met like a year before we had actually met. Take that, Brad Pitt.
Eh, it happens, depending on the situation. Um, and then I love the words that come up on the screen. We get a flashback to Colombia. They both acknowledge they met in Colombia, right, in Bogota.
Yeah, and 5 or 6 years ago on the screen. Yeah,
5 or 6 years ago. Which, okay, I giggled. I like that. That was actually a scene that they reused from Clear and Present Danger. They used some CGI to add some explosions, do some couple other things.
Really?
Yeah, and they did some other stuff with the helicopter, but that was reused from Clear and Present Danger.
Well, so I read this too. I don't know if you were going to bring this up at all, but I think maybe now's the time to talk about it since we're in Colombia, Bogota. Apparently, there was like this controversy about this, the inaccurate depiction of Bogota, because they said that Colombia criticized the film for showing Bogota as like a small village in the middle of a jungle with hot and humid climate, while like the city, then they have like this actual picture on the Wikipedia of the city, and it's like this huge, actual city. So,
yeah,
yeah, there is this type of stuff in all of these movies, I will say, where, and TV shows even, right, where Mexico has the yellow filter, and
there's
like,
a sepia tone on it.
yeah, the
everything is in the jungle.
Russia's got like the blue filter, right?
And it's always cold and snowy.
Yes.
No matter what time of year it is.
Yeah.
London is always gray. I think London might actually always be gray because it's gray.
It is. But so that was something I just wanted to bring up to acknowledge it. But like, look, this happens in all these movies. But in case if anybody was wondering about that.
I will say it's not always the best look, but when they're making these movies, they do take some creative license with what they're trying to. Sometimes what you're trying to show versus reality, like what you're trying to show isn't the same as what reality is, and sometimes what you're trying to show, reality doesn't show that well. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't translate to a movie or a TV show that well.
Yeah, yeah.
But I get it because at the same time, especially a lot of South American countries, we when we do films, TV shows, and stuff about it. Because I think The Simpsons even had an issue with it with I think Brazil about like kidnappings and there's all kinds of organized crime and it does shed a horrible light on those countries for no reason. So you do got to do better about that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it
Um,
has been getting better recently, but it's still a trope that happens, unfortunately.
but we get Bogota 5 or 6 years ago. Um, we see Brad Pitt at a bar in the middle of Bogota. It's war torn. There, like as the helicopters coming in, there was explosions and stuff. Right, you hear gunfire. City's full of chaos. It's a war zone. Um, Apparently, someone, the police or the military, busting this place. Brad Pitt finds out through the bartender. Apparently, someone killed someone called the Barracuda. So they're looking for tourists who are there by themselves. So they're looking at Brad Pitt. Angelina Jolie comes in. They start looking at her, but they kind of recognize that they need each other in this moment to at least portray that they're a married couple so they don't, so they can get themselves out of danger. Now, one thing I'll say is I even tried to look this up. I wonder if either of the two of them were the ones who actually killed the Barracuda.
Yeah, is that not wrapped up then?
It's not. I looked online. I tried to find it. Couldn't find it. I don't know if anything's ever came out. I'd like to think it's the movie's at least hinting at the fact that one of the two of them
That's what I
probably
thought.
was.
Yeah.
But like I would have. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I would have at least liked some resolution on, especially later when they're talking about and the truth starts coming out and start talking about stuff. Like it would have been nice for one of them to be like, "Yeah, I was the one who took out the Barracuda."
Yeah, yeah.
That would have been great. But that's just me. Um. So this is the first scene of where I say I can see some chemistry between the two when they're dancing later in the rain and they have the sexy night out and stuff. And I don't know. To me, there's some stuff you can put on film and you can fake and people can try and act. But sometimes there's just chemistry that just can't, like a connection between two people that you can just look at and be like, I wouldn't believe these two people would be together. But I don't know. Like, I kind of saw sparks between these two. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say there's really only two scenes I can really see it in. It's this one and the scene when they're blowing each other up in the house and get it on. Like, but the rest of the movie I didn't see as much. I mean, obviously because part of it is they're acting like they hate each other, right? Because
Yeah.
they're in their bored marriage, dead bedroom situation.
So we get, we get a nice little sexy scene of them dancing. Jane wakes up the next morning, as always in every movie, with the sheet wrapped perfectly around her or whatever to cover her body. Not knocking that, I'm just saying it happens in every movie. Um, but she thinks maybe it was a one night stand, because he's not there, but he came back, brought her some coffee. They start developing an attraction to feelings, right? We see, I guess they're in New York City. It looked like Chicago, maybe, I don't know, but especially since I know like Vince Vaughn is like a big Chicago guy. So now we see them talking with
I think they're
their
in New York
coworker.
for most of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying like this first scene where they
Oh,
get
okay.
back to the States. I thought maybe it was like Chicago, but it probably is New York somewhere. I don't know. But now we see them talking to their coworkers about the person they met, right? Jane speaking with Jasmine as they're doing rock climbing on this massive mountain and everything. John is talking to Eddie as he's in the middle of an MMA ring, right? And he's kind of working out, getting his thing on. Basically, we find out he proposed to Jane and they're getting married. And Eddie's trying to talk him out of it, but he also can't hear him because John's getting punched in the face pretty
Right.
continuously. And he thinks maybe like, I think you knocked some sense out of him. He's talking crazy, whatever. We cut to 5 or 6 years later. Once again, great callback. So what did you think of the meeting, of our first meeting between John and Jane, and then our introduction of their co-workers, who are integral parts of their lives?
Yeah, I guess it was trying to, like, I liked seeing Vince Vaughn. I like Vince Vaughn, so that was nice. And then recognizing Kerry Washington too, as I guess before she was really famous.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, no, it was interesting with the scene where they're fighting, because I didn't realize at first, I guess, that these were going to be their coworkers and not just friends, type of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I can't picture Vince Vaughn as a spy. Uh,
I wouldn't say a spy. I'd say more of assassins.
yeah, assassins, but yeah, I can't really picture him as one of those. My default for Vince Vaughn is always dodgeball. So
Yeah, something like that.
so seeing him in the gym was very normal for me. um, but yeah, no, I
So,
think it was a very interesting start to the film.
so one thing I forgot to bring up too is there shows them on a date at a carnival, right? And they're walking along, and you got all the carny games that they're all rigged, right? So that you don't win. Like they're carnies. That's what they do. Like they're rigged so they can take your money, and maybe every now and then you'll get like a little dinky prize or whatever. So they come up on a shooting game, right? This is the audience's first clue that there's something amiss between the two of them. Yeah, Jane picks up the rifle. She's not even holding it properly. She's just kind of aiming it with her body. She hits a couple of the targets. Okay, cool. John picks it up, right? And a lot of people wouldn't notice this, but so where is it? Where is it? During the carnival scene, he picks up the rifle, right?
Mm-hmm.
He closes his left eye to aim, and then he opens it so he can retain his peripheral vision. It's what snipers are taught to do, which hints at his abilities with weapons. So unless you really have a lot of weapons training or involved with weapons, or like most people wouldn't pick up on that. I didn't even pick up on that until I saw the notes on this. But he hits like 4 out of 5 or something, right? He misses the last one. He wins like a little teddy bear. But because he did better than her, Jane's competitive streak comes out. So now she wants to go again. And she's pretty forceful about like, no, I want to go again. And when she does, she nails every single target. Like she hits all of them. What did you think of? What did you think of? And John's just kind of looking there in shock at her, like, what is going on here? But they both just chalk it up to both of their hitting targets as beginner's luck.
Yeah, this was actually one of the things that stood out to me as mind-boggling on how they don't pick this stuff up with each other. I guess they just didn't want to see it, but it was uh look, okay, so I of course know the twist because of the trailers. So I know they're both spies. That's the whole thing that gets you into the scene, right? So I assume most of the people in the theater know that as well. Now, if you just oh, you're on mute. But if you just happen to sit and watch this on FX without reading the description, maybe it gets you, right? But for me, knowing that ahead of time and that, I'm like, how do you not know she is a spy, or how do you not know how good he is for using these weapons and stuff like that was getting me.
We'll get to something else later, but you know what to chalk it up to? Dude's in love. They're both in love.
Yeah.
And when you first start a relationship, right, you can overlook some things just because you're so enamored with that other person. Sometimes it's good things you overlook, you find out later. Sometimes it's bad things, right? Sometimes people leave little breadcrumbs and trails and they leave hints as to who they really are. But you're so enamored, you're so infatuated with that person that you just kind of overlook it for good or bad. And I think this is another one of those scenarios.
Yeah, it could be.
We get once again, we get 5 or 6 years later, they're now married, right? what did you think of this house?
Dude, this was huge house. Especially
This
what?
house has
So hold on. Her cover is she's a bartender.
he does construction or whatever. He's in charge of like construction projects. She's involved in like technology stuff.
Okay. So
Maybe at the time, maybe like when they first met or something, she was a bartender
I thought that's what he said when
or quote
he
unquote.
was getting beat up.
Yeah,
Um, like when he was telling Vince Vaughn about her, I thought he said bartender. So maybe that was originally, but her cover.
yeah.
Um, so at first I was like, "Whoa, this is a huge house for that." But construction can make money and stuff. This is a big house. It reminds me of the Ferris Bueller house. Actually,
Yeah.
it looked very
Like
similar.
he's in charge of this construction company.
Yeah.
She's the CEO of like this technology company. They both make a ton of money, right? And it looks like they're living maybe in like Long Island, maybe somewhere in Connecticut, something like that. Because they're traveling into like New York City all the time. It works out for both of them that they're both in charge of these massive companies or something. So they're always traveling, right? So it's not against, they're both going off to do their own thing, which their own thing just happens to be that they're killing people. But, like they
Like you're
both have
one to
business.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, but they both have business trips they got to take all the time. So
Yeah.
it is what it is, right? Um, we'll talk about this a little bit now, but okay, this has to be a custom built house, right? Like, especially with everything that we see
Oh yeah.
later in this movie, this isn't just a regular house. Like, this is a custom built house.
Now they could have bought this house and then made those changes, but
Okay, but once again, how did they make these changes in this house that we'll talk about later without the other person really having any knowledge
well,
of
how
it?
do they
Like,
also like if it's custom built? How do they also tell the builders to do it without knowing?
so
Yeah.
I have an answer to that.
Okay.
They work for like government organizations that kill people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they have to have the cover. Like we see later when he goes into his little job, his secretary gives him like some, hotel receipts and all this other stuff to kind of keep his cover going. I'm sure that they have on or off the books construction companies that they work with that make stuff that they need. Because, like, okay, we'll talk about it later with Jane's work. She's more high tech than John is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Angelina Jolie's whole thing is more high technologically advanced than Brad Pitt's more just like a kind of a James Bond type, but without the gadgets. But Angelina Jolie's very much about gadgetry and technology. But I'm sure they have construction companies or people who, like, someone had to build her office, and it's not just her office. She's got an office on like the 50th floor of a building,
Yeah.
right? So they got to have a company that's going to build stuff and kind of set her office in certain ways that other people aren't going to know about, especially since more than likely they don't own the building. Now there's a chance it's a shell company. The government does own the building, and they leased out the other floors to other people, but they kept the 50th floor for her. That's always a possibility. But same thing with still like it's feasible that Brad Pitt would have his little shed and some stuff out in the backyard, as most men are want to do or are shown to have in TV shows and movies, right? And I'm sure like he's not just gonna hire Joe's Construction down the street. I'm sure he's got his own set construction company that can build his stuff like that he wants. So that explains that. But how do you, like, she's got stuff built into the ovens and things.
Yeah, that was wild.
How is this? How does John not know about this stuff? Yeah. She tells him later she's never cooked a day in her life.
Yeah. So and I missed that when she said that. Who did she say cooked then?
The girls from her agency.
Oh, okay.
But they also show her taking stuff out of an oven earlier. Now it could be she was just reheating it.
Yes, that's exactly what I think it was. It's like they made it and then she puts it in they may have just brought it to and she puts it in the oven, not even reheating it, and then she just pulls it out like, oh, it's here.
Or she just They just give her instructions, put her in at 450 for 60 minutes, right?
Right,
And that's all
right.
she's got to do.
Yeah.
I don't know, but stuff like that. But how much do you really know about your significant other? Who knows?
Well, apparently they
So
don't know anything about each other. That is the like, to be married for 5 to 6 years and just I get they're always away and that's part of it, right? But it's like very like did they ever spend any time alone because
okay, but they did because late as we find out later, they
yeah.
talk about like he brought his real parents to the wedding.
Yes.
She hired an actor,
Hired
and then
actors.
Brad Pitt's like, I told you I saw your dad on Fantasy Island.
Yes, that part was good.
Right?
That line was good.
Um, so I mean, they have. I guess at some point they figured out, hey, this is a great cover, right? They think each other's job is legitimate. They think it's a great cover for them to continue doing what they're doing, and they find ways to just kind of keep these covers up. I don't know. I mean, especially if they live that lie long enough. I mean, um, but we see that their domesticated bliss isn't so blissful necessarily, right? They're getting ready for work. It's very, like I said, it's an extravagant house, gorgeous. But they're just there's some things that are off between the two of them. You can sense some tension. Some things aren't connecting between the two. They go out to work, and it seems they have issues because they have a 2-car garage. They park next to each other. Okay. But then it goes into one lane, and they leave for work at the same time, but they can't figure out who's going to go first.
Really bad design of the driveway.
And not only that, but there's just communication issues. Communication would solve a lot of these issues.
Communicate with your spouse. Yes.
So they get to their respective jobs. We show them interacting with people at the jobs. Like I said, Brad Pitt works at this construction company. His secretary gives him his cover story for him going away, some airline ticket stubs and some other stuff, hotel receipts, all these other things, right? He's talking with Eddie. You kind of get the sense Eddie doesn't like Jane. He's that friend that they always show in stuff like this, who he's a friend to the end, but he doesn't like the missus for whatever reason. They don't get along. And here's where we see like the distinct differences between their two personalities as well. John goes to work. He gets a target. He gets an assignment, right? And it's like some basic names through the phone and some other stuff. Jane gets to work, and she works in this high rise, and it's all these computers and technology and all this other stuff. And like, so like we see there's also like that split there. I think this is also where we see, what's his name here? Oh, Benjamin, Adam Brody there for the first time, where he goes in to speak. We also get an appearance by is Keith David as father, the voice.
Yes.
Angelina Jolie's job.
Yes, Keith David's voice is so magnificent. I could tell it was him without having to look it up.
We do get a glimpse of him like through a computer screen later to like verify it's him. But yeah, he does have that very remarkable distinctive voice.
Yeah, because I grew up watching Gargoyles, which was a Disney animated series made by people that made like Batman the Animated Series, and it was a really great show. And he played Goliath, the main one of those, and his voice has just been etched in me since then.
You know whose voice was distinctive, but I never recognized it? The guy who played Uncle Phil. I didn't know he was Shredder until he passed away.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then I found that out, and then I heard a clip from a cartoon, and I'm like, how did I not recognize this dude?
Mm-hmm.
So they go out, they get back home, they go their separate ways to eat. They each have a separate contract for a different person that they're going to take out, right? John goes to this kind of little seedy place in, looks like I thought it was maybe like Chinatown or something, but I don't know. It's some seedy little dive bar that he goes in the back for. That there's some illegal poker games going on.
Yeah. That threw me off, Casey, because like you said, it looked like Chinatown. So I thought they were like on a mission out of the country at first. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like I thought they flashed to them like on another, and then when they came back and they were getting changed and they go to the friend's house, I was like, oh, never mind, they were
yeah.
here.
We get Angelina, we get Jane going into the city. Um, oof, yeah. This is that outfit on Angelina Jolie. Oof. Anyway, she's playing a dominatrix for a dude apparently who's selling weapons to people. Um, they both managed to take out their target. John has to act like he's drunk and he stumbled in to this poker game by mistake. Right? They're trying to get rid of him, but uh, he's trying to play off that he's so drunk and he's talking trash about how he could take him. He's trying to make himself a mark for them, like, oh, we're just going to take this guy's money pretty easily, and then we'll, send him on his way. Eventually, his target comes in. He takes everybody out. He gets mad, though, because he got beaten by a pair of threes, which, been there before, man. Guy bluffs, beats you with a crappy hand. He's just like, God damn it. I could have beat that hand. Jane, like I said, manages to take her target out, dominatrix style. She even brings up the line of, we've been selling weapons to bad people, and that's when the guy kind of realizes, like, oh crap.
Yeah,
She's not who she says she is.
his face kind of falls a bit, like, what?
She breaks his neck. Then she manages to escape out the high-rise building and catch a cab. So what did you think of our first glimpse of their true identities here?
Yeah, I like the scene where he goes and has to do the poker. So seeing their different styles, right, is kind of what you get here on how they operate. He has the two guns holstered. She just uses her hands and breaks his neck. Very different styles. Obviously, too, she can't really. She knows she's going to be searched, right? So she has to kind of do her own thing here going in there. So no, I thought this was a fun scene of seeing their different styles. I will also shout out. I like the people at the poker party because they have soccer on in the background. So at least they went out watching the beautiful game. So
And considering it's the middle of the night too, or it's evening for us, so
that's what also made me
it's
think it was overseas. Is because
yeah.
there's not that many games at night during our time. Yeah.
So yeah, they were probably watching Champions League
replay of it or something.
or something. Yeah, from across the pond there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they get back home, they change, and next thing you know, they go to their neighbor's house to meet their neighbors and things.
Yeah.
Angelina Jolie didn't change totally. She forgot to change out of her fishnet stockings, which was a little awkward. Yeah. And they go their separate ways. Brad Pitt goes with the other guys. Angelina Jolie goes with the other women. Here we kind of see some more differences between the two as well. There's a baby, and Jane doesn't seem very motherly or like she wants children at all. But she's kind of forced to hold the baby and
awkwardly holding the baby out. Yeah,
wants nothing to do with this child. As she looks at John from across the room, it's almost like, get me out of here. So once again, we cut back to him at work. And this is where they get a target. That target happens to be the guy who we saw earlier, who got a target, who got his own mission. But we don't totally know that yet. But we see they get the target, Benjamin Danz, known as the Tank. How he got the name the Tank, I don't know. Maybe they're just...
Yeah, Adam Brody does not look like a tank.
He's not a tank in any way, shape, or form, right? Right? But both agencies get a target of the Tank that they need him to take out. We find out he's being transferred from Mexican officials over to U.S. officials, and the information both agencies are given is the best place to do this is right on the other side of the border. Once again, this is where we also see their distinct styles come into play. Brad Pitt is more rugged. Like you said, he's very hands-on, but he's more rugged. His whole plan is he's just going to like ambush the convoy with a rocket launcher and just blow it up. Angelina Jolie asked for satellite imagery, and she's got landmines and explosives, and she's got a set of binoculars that can kind of recognize stuff and give distances, and just they go about their business in two totally different, distinct ways. What they don't know is they run into each other on this mission. Now, what we find out later is they were meant to run into each other. That was the purpose. But obviously, chaos ensues. Chaos ensues. They take shots at each other. Jane takes an actual rifle shot at John. John tries to blow her up with a rocket launcher. Explosions happen. The target gets away. They both leave the scene, very angry and perturbed. And now they realize that they have to take out the other one, although they don't know who the other one is yet. What did you think of this interaction between the two?
Well, I thought it was funny. He's doing like the dune buggy act of like, oh, I'm just out here riding in this dune buggy.
I could see Brad Pitt just riding along
Yeah.
in a dune buggy like that, though. Like for him, that looks like that would be fun to him.
And her reaction of just like, oh, like who is this asshole? And then like, you know, and then you see his plan is okay. Let's get the big rocket launcher out. I will say, I think okay. So here's my question about the twist at the end, right? That this was all set up to make them see each other. So they don't like that these two spies of different agencies are
Married, living in the same house.
living in the same house. But the agencies are okay with working together to both put the same target on them?
So I think the agencies, the two competing agencies that they work for, they're never explicitly explained, right? But I think it's probably something that the two agencies have worked together previously, but they just choose to go about their own business. And I think both agencies, whoever's in charge of both agencies, probably got together in some sort of covert X-Files type meeting, right? And decided either one needs to take the other out or they both need to take each other out. And they both acknowledge that they'd probably be fine with that. Now, they both seem like they're number one in their agency, in their respective agencies, right? But at the same time, I think they both realize this might be a necessity.
Now, do you think they think that because they both don't know it, like they're too dumb to have realized that they are married to the other agency, or do you think they're just concerned about for some other reason?
It could be that. It could be a situation of, okay, let's say obviously they're doing covert operations, right? They're probably we see they go overseas at some point because they both ended up in Colombia at some point. So what happens if they doing separate operations? One of them gets kidnapped or something. Obviously, the other one is going to want to go get their significant other. But that also could be against what the agency that individual's work, like that could go against what that individual's working for, that agency's working for, right? So it could just cause a lot of issues as far as like, it could be a situation where it could put the United States, the entire country, in danger. Now that's going way overboard. That's an extreme, right? Let's think about this, right? Especially, this was 20 years ago, but the climate we live in now, right? Let's say one of them gets captured by Russians, right? Obviously, the other one's going to want to go help them, but at the same time, like, You're gonna storm into Moscow trying to find the other person. Like we see it happen in movies all the time, but that's also something that can escalate things. And next thing you know, there's mutually assured destruction and nuclear war happens, right? So it could just be a situation of the both agency heads got together and was like, can't have this. Obviously, we can't say we're going to take out one of the two, but if one of them takes the other one out, that's fine. If they both manage to take the other one out, even better. And then we just kind of carry on with what we do. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, this was the weakest part of the movie. Was the it looked like oversight in the script, and it may not be, but it's just like, where it's like, okay, it turns out both agencies got on the same page for this one thing, but they couldn't have him both living together. Like that's what seemed kind of
Okay, but
for
here's the
me.
thing. As we find out later, though, the plan wasn't for them to take out the tank.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So, but the agencies both had to agree to make the same target and who that target would be, so that way they
Yeah,
would see each other. So there had to be communication between the two agencies. What I'm saying, and it's like,
yeah.
um, just because they didn't like them both living together, it was kind of like a, I don't know, that for me is the weakest part of the plot, and I just think that is,
You know what? You know what I could equate it to? CIA East and CIA West from Arrested Development.
yeah, yeah.
Like realistically, just like I mean, I've had to deal with in Iraq. I've had to deal with people who've worked for a couple different agencies, and sometimes they don't talk to each other. Like, and then weird things can happen when people don't talk to each other, right? But like I said, like not only that, but yeah, I think you bring up a good point that I hadn't thought of. Um, you've been married to and living with someone working for a competing agency for the last 5 or 6 years.
Hmm.
Um, maybe you're not as good as I thought. Maybe I can't have that.
Right. That's what I started to head canon a bit to make it make more sense. Where they're like, "Hey, both of our highest agents are dumbasses, so let's agree to take them out by you know doing this fixed thing,
But
so they
yeah.
find out each other are actually spies, and then let's see where the chips fall on that type of thing." But yeah, I don't know.
So John picks up a laptop, right, from the explosions and stuff. He takes it back with him. Jane gets back, and obviously Jane had video footage of everything from satellite imagery and some other stuff. So this is one of the best parts right here for me, is when they both realize who each other is.
Hmm.
So John gets the laptop. He takes it to someone who does some work for him.
Gets the
There's
address.
a memory chip in there, right? They're able to look up the memory chip, and she gives him the address where it was shipped to. So he goes to the address. He's got the address. Says whatever building. Which this kind of bothered me a bit because how does he not know where his wife works, and how did he not recognize that address right off the bat?
Yeah, yeah. So I could understand if they're like, "Hey, it was shipped to a Jane Smith," you'd be like, "Yeah, there's millions." But
Yeah.
once you see the address, you're like, "Wait a minute, that's where I dropped my
So
wife off at work that one time her car was in the shop." Like, you think that like he would know in case he had to get a hold of her while they're married for 5 years, that he would know the address of the place. Yeah.
yeah, maybe he wants to send her flowers one day, right, at work or
Right.
something.
That's
I don't
good
know.
cover. That's good cover. Send
But
flowers.
so he gets to the building, right, and he manages to see the suite number 5003, and he looks over, and it's Jane's company CEO. And I love his reaction, sweet mother of God. Like, it hits him, holy crap.
And it could be
My
too,
wife
like
just,
if we wanted to give Simon Kinberg, the writer, a little leeway on this, it could be that he did know the address, but it's like, I need to be sure. And then he sees
that's a
it in
possibility,
person
too.
and is like,
Yeah.
damn, yeah, that's right.
Or maybe he just didn't realize the suite number, like
Yeah,
5003
yeah.
or whatever. Like, okay, like I said, that place has 50 floors. So, I'm sure offices and various other people have rented out various floors or offices in that building, right? So okay, just because it's at 123 Main Street doesn't mean anything, but 123 Main Street, 5003, and then he sees Jane Smith, CEO of whatever technology company is. Oh crap! The best part though is as Jane is looking at this footage, and it's footage of John peeing, taking a leak, right? And he calls his wife, right? And as she's watching this, we hear Kerry Washington, we hear Jasmine, Jane, it's your husband. And that's when it hits her.
Yeah, yeah. But she means on the phone, yeah.
Yeah, obviously
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
talking about on the, it's your husband on the phone. But once again, like the writing for that scene and the placement of everything of Jane, it's your husband was pitch perfect for me. And then as she just looks at it like, oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Now, I guess my question is, because they kind of both leap immediately to this is bad, the other one's going to kill me. Is that the first thought you would have with this, or would you be like, hey, maybe we should talk about this first? Or
I don't know if there's any. I'll be honest. I don't know if there's any talking after that. He shot a rocket at her. She tried to shoot him in the chest.
mm-hmm.
What?
But she didn't know who he was, and he did. You know what I'm saying?
Granted, you didn't know who the other person was, right? And you can maybe chalk that up, but at the same time, like, I don't know what can be said at that point. Like,
because then this is the night when they go home and have dinner, right?
yeah.
And then they start each reaching for weapons.
So yeah, so they go home, right? The phone call coincidentally was, "Hey, John wants to know what time dinner is. Dinner's at 7. Always is, because I guess they just have that same routine. He always comes in right at 7 o'clock. Dinner's always ready right at 7, and so on and so forth.
And I think she thinks of it as almost like the 5 or 6 year thing, almost like it's always at 7. Like, why does he need to be?
Yeah.
Why does he need to be told this?
So keep this in tow, but a domesticated Angelina Jolie. Man. All right. Before we talk about this scene, are you an Alfred Hitchcock fan?
I mean, I've seen a few of his movies, but I'm not like a huge fan.
Okay.
I appreciate him, I'll say.
He's known as the master of suspense.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a quote I'm going to read you from Alfred Hitchcock. And it fits perfectly in this scene. Right? So the first part is, there's no terror in the bang, only in the anticipation of it. The quote goes, there's a distinct difference between suspense and surprise, and yet many pictures continually confuse the two. I'll explain what I mean. I'm not going to do a horrible British Alfred Hitchcock voice because that would just ruin it. So we're now having a very innocent little chat. Let's suppose there is a bomb underneath the table between us. Nothing happens. Then all of a sudden, boom, there's an explosion. The public is surprised. But prior to this surprise, it has seen an absolutely ordinary scene of no special consequence. Now, let's take a suspense situation. The bomb is underneath the table, and the public knows it, probably because they have seen an anarchist place it there. The public is aware the bomb is going to explode at 1 o'clock, and there is a clock in the decor. The public can see that it is 1:45. In these conditions, the same innocuous conversation becomes fascinating because the public is participating in the scene. The audience is longing to warn the characters on the screen. You shouldn't be talking about such trivial matters. There's a bomb beneath you and it is about to explode. In the first case, we have given the public 15 seconds of surprise at the moment of the explosion. In the second, we have provided them with 15 minutes of suspense. The conclusion is that whenever possible, the public must be informed, except when the surprise is a twist, that is, when the unexpected ending is in itself the highlight of the story. And I've heard this quote before, and I've looked at it with a lot of things. And a lot of filmmakers have taken this quote from Hitchcock and used it very well. I know you're not a fan of his work, but there's a scene in Inglourious Bastards
Mm.
from Quentin Tarantino of I think it's like the opening scene, like opening farmhouse scene of Inglourious Bastards. Of unfortunately, there's a bunch of Jews hiding beneath the floor, and the main character, who's I forget who plays the main protagonist and antagonist in there.
All I know is that B.J. Novak is in that movie from The Office.
But it's he did Django Unchained. He did Christoph Waltz.
Oh yeah.
Christoph Waltz plays like a Nazi leader, and he goes in, and there's this suspense of they know, and it ends horribly. Like all the people under the stairs get killed because he knows they're there, and eventually they open fire on him. But there's the suspense of it. At the same time, this scene when John pulls into his home, knowing that his wife tried to kill him. Jane is home, knowing that her husband tried to kill her. For me, this is almost picture perfect in that aspect of suspense. Because we, the audience, know this. And then as they go through, he pulls in, right? He's looking for his wife because he's not sure what's going on. She surprises him at the door. She's made a martini for him. Because we've seen earlier from his routine, he gets home, he makes a martini, right? But she's already got one made for him. I don't know if that's something that happens regularly. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But the conversation between the two of, hey, how was work? Some things happened. I missed you. I missed you too. Right? Little quotes like that between the two of them. We had some trouble at work, and so on and so forth. And as John goes into the dining room, he sees that there's a bottle of Drano left on the counter.
Yeah.
If you're John, are you drinking the martini?
No. No, I'm not eating or drinking any of this stuff. Like I know he does eventually eat some because she's eating some, right? But it's yeah, I don't know if I trust any of this.
So I might not drink the martini, but I probably would have eaten the food. A, I'm a fat ass and I love food. B, to me, Jane doesn't look like a poisoning kind of person.
Yeah.
Now, granted, nobody does until they poison you, right?
Right.
But now I can say that from having looked at this from afar, right? Jane doesn't look like a poisoning assassin. She's a different kind of a creature there. But yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know about the martini, but especially with the I definitely would eat the food. I think I would have trusted it. That didn't seem her style.
The touch of having the salt close to him so he doesn't have to ask for the salt was nice too. Because that was a problem in their marriage before where he's like, can you pass the salt? And she's like,
it's in the middle
it's
of
in
the
the middle.
table.
And this time he says it, and then she like kind of looks at him, and he sees like, oh, it's right here. Like, it was just this over the top being kind when it's not, when they were going through trouble in their marriage and stuff.
Yeah, he comes in. There's candles on, at the table, and they probably brought out the fine china. She probably brought out the fine china. He's like, oh, I thought this was for special occasions. This is right. So the tension is building between the two. Because each one knows about the other one. They don't know if the other one knows, but each one knows about the other one.
Yeah. It's like Friends, where it's like they don't know that we know they know we know type of situation.
Once again, I gotta say this. I don't know why, but I'm intrigued by Angelina Jolie with a knife. To me, she seems like she does know how to use a knife. And that's scary, yet arousing. And they came up with a perfect term for that in Futurama, where Fry once said, I'm scaroused.
I want to point out here, you said about Hitchcock earlier. And, he's really good at this anyway, from like if you watch Rear Window, Vertigo, movies like that. Those are a lot of the movies I've watched of Hitchcock. But I just saw a name of a movie that he made in 41, and I want to highlight it. It's called Mr. and Mrs. Smith. in
Yeah, there's no
1940.
connection.
No,
No.
I know. It's an American screwball comedy, one of the only movies he directed that was a comedy. Apparently, he did it in a favor to Carol Lombard. But just kind of funny looking through his filmography and seeing that. And I was like, oh my God, just funny that you're using a Hitchcock quote about this movie. And then there's a movie with the same name.
I pulled that quote up before I got through the rest of some other facts and then saw that this has no connection to the Alfred Hitchcock movie
Yeah.
this year. This is good. But so there's dinner. They start eating, right? As she's starting to cut the pot roast, John gets a little scared, so he wants to come in and says no, he'll take it. But Jane pulls another knife out from out of nowhere to cut the bread. Tension keeps going. Like you said, there's the salt scene, and they both eat. John decides to get up and pour a glass of wine. And I wonder how long those two could have went with each other if he didn't do this, right? Of just kind of letting this kind of simmer between the two. I think it ended at a perfect time. I think if they would have went another couple scenes, or like throughout the rest of the night, it would have got old. But he pours a glass of wine, hands it to her. He drops the wine bottle, but her instincts and reflexes kick in. She grabs it from out of nowhere. And that's when they both kind of realize to each other. They both look at each other and realize, oh, the jig is up.
Yeah, so then she drops it anyway, so that way she has to go excuse herself for a towel.
Yeah. And then they both take off. They both split up, right? And they realize, oh hell, like this is not good overall. They leave the house. Jane leaves in a car. John pulls out a gun for whatever reason, I don't know. And he's got to kind of do a Ferris Bueller type thing through people's yards. Right?
I was going to mention that. I was like, oh my goodness. It's funny the order we watch these movies in, because sometimes we just end up with these connections that we put together.
I completely forgot about this scene until I saw it. And then I was like, oh, this is kind of like a Ferris Bueller scene. And we just watched that. Yeah, we make these little connections through movies and everything, and it's great. But yeah, he's running through people's yards. So he okay. So after the Smiths discover each other's identity, Jane speeds away in the car. John runs after her. He ends up tripping and crashing through a fence, and his gun goes off. The trip was a mistake, and Brad Pitt's reaction, as well as the following ad-lib of "Oh dear God," were genuine.
Oh, wow.
So that scene was supposed to be a little bit different, but I like the way it turned out. Of him kind of tripping over the fence and accidentally shooting through the windshield. And then trying to explain, like, hey, it's not what it looks like. Like, that was an accident. I didn't mean to do that. If I'm Jane, I'm trying to run him over too. Like, yeah, that like.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like all the gloves are off at this point. He ends up on the hood or the roof of the car after she tries to run him over. He manages to get inside the car. She ducks out. And then they both end up with their respective work buddies, where they spill the beans. He tells Eddie, hey, Jane was the other assassin. Of course, Eddie is there for him, but he's also at the same time like, I told you so, blah, blah, blah. Jasmine is at the office. She's talking with Jane. She's trying to offer support. But they both realize, like, man, this has to end. So we get a little sad scene of them both kind of just sitting up at night. It's unfortunate. We get the next morning. We get Jane, Jasmine, and her girls tear through the house. Literally. Destroying things. We come to find out that they found John's little hidden shack, or his basement under the hidden shack, and clean out his guns and things. Jane gets a little teary eyed as she's watching the wedding video. That she kind of takes off limits from everybody, right? So you can kind of see that she still loves this dude, you know?
Yeah. That's our way of finding out that they both do like love each other. They're just not telling each other. So like, later, I don't know how much later in this scene or in this part, but there'll be a part when Brad Pitt, Mr. Smith calls her and she puts on this front of,
Yeah.
no, you were just a mark
You,
type of thing. Um and he's hurt by that, and he's, so you can kind of see we know the truth. Like, we know the truth on our
she
side.
regrets
Yeah.
saying it too after she hangs up.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's not something she wanted to do, but I guess she was trying to make the cleanest break possible.
She probably didn't think she could trust him. It's like this. How can you trust somebody that lied to you for 6 years, even though you lied to them as well? It's a very tough situation to know if you could ever be able to fully trust them when you both know you're assassins. Like that's
But
just the biggest part.
but like at the same time, like Brad Pitt says later, we're gonna have to redo every conversation we've ever
Yes.
had.
Yep. Yeah, because
Um,
the one time, she says something about um how she didn't help at like something, and he's like, "Oh, I really like that about you," you know?
she wasn't in the Peace Corps.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, "Oh, I really liked that about you." So yes, things that you may have found attractive are now things you have to talk about to figure out if those were true or not.
So John gets back to his place, finds everything cleaned out. He's pretty pissed. I would be too. Looks like he put a lot of money into his little man cave there. So Jane's back at her office. She's got like 48 hours to solve the problem, basically, right? Um, so she's talking to her girls and she's like, okay, we got to put phone traces, blah blah blah. And one of them rings up like on what? John Smith, right? Like you're gonna find John Smith, right? Like okay, like yeah, sure. Um, Come to find out, they don't need to look very hard because he finds them. So we get some interaction between some playful banter and interaction between the two of them. Obviously, there's been some other frustrations between the two of them in their marriage, hinting at some sexual frustrations. He ends up breaking into their once they realize he's in their home, basically their home base. They have to scatter. They have to like get rid of everything, destroy the hard drives and all this other stuff. He had a chance and he couldn't take the shot. Do you think he could have taken a shot?
Hell no, I can't do that.
I mean, you are an assassin though. Like,
well, that's the thing. Am I an assassin in this scenario, or am I me right now? No, I can't do it. No, if I really love the person, I don't think I'd be able to.
I like the interactions with Vince Vaughn and with Eddie and John there though, especially when some other stuff happens. Eventually, he finds another. He takes some stuff from her place, right? He's going through like everything that's burned. He finds another place that they use as a home base, right? So he ends up there at some construction firm or some place that's under construction. He ends up in the elevator, and he ends up kind of trapped in the elevator. But he knows immediately it's Jane, right? So like it, voice comes over there in the elevator. Obviously, he knows it's Jane. She gives him a chance to leave, to walk away. He can't do it. So once again, they have a little back and forth, and she says goodbye. Her coworker decides to hit the switch on the elevator and blow it up.
Yeah, you said bye.
Yeah, which she was not expecting. She was not anticipating. Um, and she is obviously very distraught from this because she thinks she just killed her husband. What they don't know is Brad Pitt had or John had he was in an elevator next to the one she thought he was in, and consequently, he was sending a feed over there, and he's a little distraught because he's like this bitch really tried to kill me. Like that's the only way. Like
Yeah,
at that
yeah.
point, that's the only thing. The only words I can really use to describe that. Like because that would literally be the first thoughts coming out of my mind. Like, okay, maybe there were some accidents before.
But this time, yeah,
Like,
no
yeah,
excuses.
like
Yeah,
she really tried to blow me up and kill me. Like, I do like I said, I do like the interaction between Eddie and John, where Eddie's got the shotgun, he's in the house because he lives with his mom for whatever reason. I don't know why.
yeah. No, if he says this is what I found funny. He says he doesn't get out of bed for anything less than $500,000, and he doesn't have his own house.
Look, maybe he's trying to keep stuff off the books, and I don't know. His mom makes a good meal every now and then for him. But like he says, she doesn't live. He doesn't live with his mom. She lives with him. Sure,
Yeah,
whatever.
sure, yeah.
But I like the whole thing of Eddie, Mom, we're on high alert
Yeah,
right
I
now.
almost killed you.
You have no idea. Never mind. We see Jane at a very, very nice restaurant. Come to find out, that's where John had proposed to her. John comes up behind her, and this is another suspenseful area. But we also have a very interesting conversation between the two of them. Like John says, "You seem to want me dead, and I don't really seem to care about your welfare anymore either. So what do we do from here?" So where would you go from there at that point if you're John?
Hmm. I don't know. If I am John, I guess I am a killer. So you feel like you do have to probably take her out. Like you said, the elevator thing makes you think. No other excuses. She said bye, and then that one fell. Like he doesn't know that Kerry Washington's character dropped it, right? Like he just at that point it's okay. I've been kind of shown who she is at this point. Let me and then when he calls her later and she says you were just a mark, it's like okay that like he tries to get himself out of this a bit by like double checking with her on the
He
phone.
tries to see if it can be salvaged in
Yes,
any
and
way.
when she says that, he's like, "No, this is it," and this is where they both go back to the house or whatever. But it was yeah, at that point, it's either I have to if it's actually me and not John Smith, I'm probably fleeing. I'm getting out of there, never to be seen again. I guess.
But you're like one of the best assassins in the world. Like,
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. If it was me and not an assassin, I'm getting out of
yeah.
there. If I am an assassin, it feels like I have to probably make the move now.
Um, they have a very they said they modeled this tango scene after True Lies. Um, but they they have some interactions there where John finds the knife on Jane. Jane finds the gun on John, gets rid of it. They both plant bombs on each other to try and take the other one out. So things are starting to escalate. Business is starting to pick up here, right? Um, Jane manages to escape. She's heading home. John steals a black car and also commits a felony by throwing a bomb in a blue postal box and destroying the mail in the postal box. That's also punishable for each piece of mail that was destroyed in that box. So he's looking at a very, very long prison sentence. Just got to put that out there as a postal worker. Also, I guess, but like that's a weird spot in front of a fancy restaurant like that to have a mailbox in the middle of like downtown Manhattan.
Yeah, that was weird.
Like, I get it. It was there for the purposes of the movie. And I don't know. I haven't been in New York City in a very long time. And when I was there, I was a kid. So, I don't remember seeing any mailboxes, or I wouldn't remember where they were when I was there. But, now I'm just kind of curious of what the mailbox situation in like Manhattan looks like.
Yeah, well,
Anywho,
you could move to Manhattan and become a postal worker there and figure it out, I guess.
I'd never be able to afford it. I can barely afford to live out here in California on a postal worker salary. I don't know how they do it out there. God bless them. So yeah, he's driving back. He calls her up. This is another situation where you can tell it's some older. It's an older movie because John has the Bluetooth earpiece, and it's not like our AirPods now or smaller Bluetooth earpiece. It's the old kind of one with the microphone
Yeah.
that kind of goes from the ear to the front. You might see like some truckers and stuff using now, but yeah, that's one of those where I was like, oh, yeah, you can tell this was made in the early 2000s because that was it. Yeah, he's trying to salvage his to see if his marriage is salvageable, seeing if there is any love there. He asked her at one point, what did you think when you first saw me? He said she looked like Christmas morning, which I thought was pretty sweet, nice thing. I kind of can understand that. I remember like being a kid, like when you go downstairs Christmas time and you see that tree and everything underneath it for the first time. I can imagine, the look of like how awesome everything was on your face. And like you said, this verse tells him he was a mark. They both managed to arrive home at the same time, and she T-bones him.
Yeah.
She gets into the house first. He's trying to find it. He's trying to figure out a way into the house because he doesn't want to go through like the garage or whatever, right? There's the nosy neighbor walking the dog or whatever who tells him his car is hanging out of the driveway. So I'm guessing there's an HOA there, and that's probably against the HOA rules. So I'm sure he got a fine or something for that. Got penalized for that one.
Yeah, HOAs are a pain.
Do you have any out where you are?
Yeah. Yeah, my
Right?
townhouse is part of one. And we've changed a few times. Like the people that own the HOA or whatever have changed a few times. But so some of them have been absolute pains finding every little thing wrong, and you get the thing in the mail. It's like you got like 60 days to like fix all this stuff around, so you're gonna get fined, and it's terrible.
Dude, so John Oliver did a thing last year on HOAs,
Mm-hmm.
and they have repossessed people's homes over fines and stuff.
Yeah, they have too much power, and they keep raising prices each month too. Each year or whatever.
So yeah, so he's finding a way. He gets in the house, manages to find one of his stash of guns, and then massive firefight ensues. How the entire like police department didn't show up at this house, I'll never know. They destroyed this home. Even so far as there was an explosion because he pulled the gas line out from the stove.
Yeah, it's a little absurd, but I did like the scene then when the cops come to the door and the neighbors, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're fine. We're just like having sex."
Those weren't cops. Those were like the local security patrol.
Oh yeah. You're right then.
That was
Yeah, they should have
that was the
definitely
thing.
had.
Those weren't cops. Those were like the local security guys who drive around their little vehicles with the lights on. Yeah, they they get into some actual fisticuffs, although, and I kind of agree with this. They show John physically doing stuff to Jane, but it's more like along the lines of pushing her, throwing her into a wall or something. They show Jane physically punching John, but they do not show John physically doing anything to Jane. there's the implication he kicks her when she's down one time or something, but they don't show like any actual physical hand-to-hand violence between
Yeah.
John and Jane. And I'm okay with that. I don't know if that's something we need to see in this context. Like, I get it, in this context is not what it can appear to be, but that's one of those. I'm fine with that. I think that was a big controversy too when it first came out of like them not showing that stuff.
Mm.
Well, there was some conversation about it. But eventually it ends when they manage to have guns at each other, but neither can pull the trigger. John just can't do it. Jane wants him to do it because like she can't pull the trigger either. And then they have hot steamy monkey love.
Yes, they go at it.
Yeah, that was. Apparently, there was also a much raunchier scene that was cut, as this was a PG-13 movie. I don't know if there is an unrated, or I don't know if I'd want to see it, but I don't know if there is an unrated version of it out there. But I saw one of the notes on IMDb was there was a much raunchier version of a love scene between the two of them that didn't make the movie. As you said, the next morning, they come to, and like you said, the neighbors come over with their rent-a-cops, private security. Basically, they get the gist of, oh no, we were just having a wild night. Everything's okay. And then they kind of start to melt the ice between the two and break things down. They start having conversations. Jane ends up saying she's like numb in three fingers. John can't hear out of like one of his ears, right? And they start finding out all these other little things about each other. They start talking about different missions they went on, and I think John went on a mission, and Jane was like, "Oh, I wish I could have had that one." What did you think of them kind of melting the ice here a little bit and trying to get to know each other again for the first time?
Oh, I like this scene a lot. I think this is where, I think this is kind of where I expected the movie to go to earlier. Actually, I thought they were going to get over that stuff earlier, just from what because I remember some of this stuff showing up in trailers, like them teaming up, I believe. So
Yeah.
I kind of figured that was going to happen at some point, and I was just surprised it actually took as long as it did to happen.
So while they're doing that, once again, Postal Service was involved. Not a fan of that one. One or both agencies send people to their home to try and eliminate them. They end up in the basement. A robot brings a grenade down in the basement. It's kicked under some oil. There's an explosion. They make it out. They steal a car from their neighbor, and they end up on the freeway. They're getting to know each other again. This is where we find out, like, oh, that wasn't my dad. That was an actor. I knew it. I told you I saw your dad on Fantasy Island. Once again, they're finding out some other stuff about each other when they realize they're being tailed. So now we have like a freeway chase and shootout scene. And this is where we kind of, some more of their, each's, I don't know what to call it, alphaness kind of comes out.
Yeah.
At first, like, John is driving and Jane is trying to shoot because they're driving a minivan, but then Jane is like, no, let me drive. And John goes back and takes a guy out with a golf club. And he kind of realizes he likes the minivan because the doors come in handy for a couple of things. And there's some explosions on the freeway. And pretty good action sequences. I didn't mind that so much.
Mm-hmm.
They eventually realize, like, hey, we gotta figure something out. So they go talk to Eddie, right? Now, before this is where you brought up, Eddie's got like some sort of weird communication device, phone. I don't know what that is, two-way pager type thing, where he gets a message for Jane Smith for $400,000, basically saying, "Hey, there's a $400,000 bounty on Jane Smith's head." He says, "As much as I want to, I don't get out of bed for less than $500,000." Then he sees one that pops up for John Smith for $400,000, and that's when he's like, "Whoa, there's some stuff going on."
Yeah, that's when he gets up.
So Eddie turns down a bounty of $400,000 because he won't get out of bed for anything less than $500,000. This is borrowed from an infamous quote by Linda Evangelista in a 1990 interview by Vogue. How she said, quote, "She won't wake up for less than $10,000 a day."
I wish, man. Could you imagine?
So they meet at a diner, right? Eddie's talking to John, right? And he's trying to explain some stuff to him. And then he asks about the bitch wife, and then Jane pops up. Obviously, there's some tension between the two, but even though those weren't the best looks, I'd still pay anything for Angelina Jolie to look at me like that. But anyway,
she probably won't accept it for anything less than $500,000, though. So you're gonna have to come up with some money.
I might have to start a GoFundMe for that one. I don't know. But yeah, this is where Eddie kind of breaks it down. Like, hey, the two of you worked for competing agents. Because here's the thing, he doesn't necessarily know who Jane works for. There's word on the street now about it, and he breaks that down to John. He says, hey, if what I'm hearing, who she works for, is accurate, there's no hope for the two of you. Like,
unless you get them something they both want, right?
Well, yeah, he tells them, like, hey, if you split up, there's a chance, because now they have to hunt for you, singly, but if you stay together, you're both dead. John even asks him, like, hey, where are you at? And look, you can say what you want about Vince Vaughn and Eddie. He's a friend to the end. He's like, hey, I find myself dragging my feet this morning. Right? He could have tried to take the bounty out on both of them, but he did. Same thing with Jasmine, Kerry Washington. She was willing to give him a little bit of help.
And she said, this is as far as we go.
Yeah. But, look, you need friends like that in your life. So they both realized, like, hey, maybe if we get him the tank, this will solve the problem. Now, this is a good thought. I like that. I hadn't thought about that until that point.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I watched this, and I was like, you know what? I'm on board with this. What did you think about them saying, hey, let's go get this guy that started this whole thing, and maybe if we get him, that solves the entire problem?
I don't want to say I'm smart, but I kind of thought that's where they were going to go with it. I didn't see the last part of that twist happening with the tank, but I was kind of thinking, oh yeah, they'll just probably take out the tank and then they'll probably be good to go, and that's how the movie will end. And so I kind of thought this was the next logical step.
So, like I said, this is where Jasmine gives them some help as far as where the tank is being held. Now, this just hit me. Yeah, she helped them. She helped them for a reason, because once again, Jasmine was trying to make sure that they got hold of old Benjamin Dan's there, the tank. And that literally just hit me right now. Like, yeah, she helped them, but she wasn't doing it out of the kindness of her heart.
You don't think so?
No. Look, so here's a thought. Jane Smith is public enemy number one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think moves up to take her spot as the number one person?
Well, probably her, right? But my thought is that because they were actually friends, so I do think, just like how Eddie is helping, that she would actually help, not just for her own good.
So maybe she wasn't helping for her own good, but I can also imagine that, so here's the thing. They went to go meet Eddie in a diner, face to face, right? To try and make sure, nothing was being bugged, nothing could be tracked, whatever the case is. With the technology we saw of Jane's company, her organization, right? And we see that they have access to all this stuff, so Jasmine is able to look up where in the courthouse is being held and all this other information. That looks like that's on work. That looks like she was doing it from her work computer. I don't think she has a laptop she can take from home and patch in remotely for stuff like that. Especially in 2005. So to me, it might have been to me, like I said, I don't think it was a situation if she was necessarily doing it for her benefit, but it could have been a situation of Jane contacted her, and then her organization came up with like, okay, here's the plan. Like, we need her. Like, we still need her to. Eventually, like, we still need to capture her. So, give her the information she needs, and we'll go from there. Um, so they come up with a plan to try and go capture the tank. Jane ends up as the guy in the truck, guy behind the screen, and old John ends up in the sewers there trying to break into the courthouse. But they got some bad info, or the blueprints weren't necessarily correct, and then he had to improvise. But him improvising went against Jane's plan, even though they still managed to catch the tank. And then they had a conversation about this afterwards. He's like, "Hey, sometimes you got to improvise in this job." But she's also so where do you sit in this as far as they're both perspectives of he's saying he had to improvise to do what he had to do, her saying, "Hey, we had a plan. If we would have stuck to the plan, things would have went better."
Um, I don't know. I feel like I am a planner, but I can improvise. So I'm not sure. Uh, I'm not sure. I feel like I empathize more with Jane Smith throughout this whole movie than I do with John Smith. So I I probably I'd probably side with her on that on that part there.
I agree, but I can also see his point of view where he talks about how like there's no room for error around you. Like everything has to be done a certain way, and like every marriage is different, and sometimes opposites attract, or two people of different kinds can work together. But to me, it did seem like she had an air around her of wanting things, even throughout the house, of wanting things done a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
right? I got the impression that, like, let's say he was vacuuming or dusting or cleaning something, there would have been a right and a wrong way to do that, according to Jane.
I can see that.
Um, and I can see how that might wear. And then once you find out, obviously, neither of them have been very truthful with each other for the last 5 or 6 years, right? That starts to add and it builds everything. And it's like, how can I how can he be spontaneous in anything? How can they decide to go do something fun if everything seems to always have to be regimented out? Like maybe something he was looking for, like, hey, no, dinner tonight is gonna be at 6:30 instead of 7. Like, we go back to that. Like, dinner is at 7 o'clock. It always is, right? Maybe he wants to eat a little later. Maybe he wants to eat earlier. Maybe he wants to, I mean, I don't know with DoorDash now, but like maybe he wants to, have dinner in front of the TV or something, right? But that doesn't seem like, in that relationship, that doesn't seem like something like that would fly.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I can see how that could be a little grating at times. So they get to a hotel, and there's some great interactions between the three of them. The tank is tied up, right? Um, and John is trying to threaten him, but not doing it in necessarily a menacing way. But it's still pretty funny. There's option one, there's option two, I kill you. There's option three, but like I don't want to give you all the details. But just,
Yeah.
it ends up bad. And then there's Jane, where at some point she just gets tired and she just takes the phone out the wall. There would have been so much head trauma in this movie.
Yes, there would have.
Like three of these people for sure would have been in a coma, if not already dead.
Hearing
Concussions galore.
loss, right? There would be like
CTE.
hearing loss from like the rockets and the guns and stuff.
Just horrible, horrible damage. Have you ever seen The Other Guys with
No.
Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell? So probably the most realistic explosion scene I've ever seen. Will Ferrell plays like an accountant for the police force, right? And Mark Wahlberg is a cop. They both work for the police force, but blah blah blah. So at some point, something happens, and they're paired up somehow, and there's an explosion, right? And they're trying to like run away from the explosion like they do in all the action movies, and they jump right as the explosion hits. But it doesn't turn out the same way. Like, you can look it up on YouTube. It's a funny scene because he's like, "Oh my god, I thought we would make it through that. Oh my god, I could barely hear anything. I think I have soft tissue damage. What were we thinking?" And it's one of those, because not only is there like the actual explosion and the heat, but there's also like a force field, a wave, and a blast wave that comes out, and that causes a lot of damage too. But I don't know, if you get a chance to look that up, it's pretty funny. So they're talking with the tank, and he comes to confess because he doesn't want Brett. One of John's things is he's going to lose his thumbs, right? And I kind of did the same thing when he's like, "I'm going to rip your thumbs off with my pliers." Kind of did the same thing he did where I kind of tucked my thumbs inside, like, yeah, it doesn't kind of, not necessarily squeamish, but like, doesn't sound too good. Not a fan of that. So he's got a picture in his back pocket of the two of them. Seems the two competing agencies found out that they were married to each other, right? And he confesses he wasn't the target in Mexico. They were the target. They were trying to. The two agencies were hoping they would take each other out. And then, he says, "You were used as bait." And as Jane's walking away, she says, "Was or is?" Come to find out, in his belt, he's got a GPS device on his belt.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're being tracked again. So they managed to leave the hotel room, right? They end up in a grate, like a sewer grate, where they're hiding from all these people. Jane wants to run. John's like, "Hey, we can't really run. If we run, we're going to be running for the rest of our lives. Who knows how long it's going to be. Like, we're going to have to fight this out. And this is going to end one way or the other tonight." Kind of agree with him. Like, yeah, it can't be running. Like, because, I mean, they're assassins. They've used assumed identities before, and but I'm sure their network of contacts are going to dry up. I'm pretty sure, just like the TV show, there'd be a burn notice put out on them.
Yeah.
So they really couldn't, like, who's really going to work with them? Who's going to do anything with them at that point? So they end up at like a home. I forget the name of the stores. But they end up next to some like Mega Mart and some home, I don't know, some massive mall type store. You know what I thought of when I saw this?
What?
Because it's in the middle of the night, right? I thought of, it's going to be some dude at like 3:30 or 4 in the morning who goes to open up the store, like the manager who goes to open up the store to let his workers in. He's going to come into his store demolished, and there's going to be a bunch of dead bodies around his store.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell, man? Like what is going on here? How do you explain that to anybody?
Yeah, well, you would hope that somebody cleaned it up before then, but I guess we don't know.
The amount of damage they did to that store, there's no cleanup. They're not pulling out.
I meant like clean out the bodies at least. I don't know.
Okay. Let's say hypothetically a government agency went in there and managed to get the 50 dead bodies that end up in this place. What about the damage that's caused in the store?
Well, yeah, I mean that I don't know. I feel like somebody's got to take care of that for them through the insurance or something.
I don't know, man. If I'm an insurance company, I don't know if that's really covered under your policy, dude.
But I feel like if the government doesn't want any problems, or the agencies don't want any problems, somebody would have to.
But these are off the books. Nobody even knows these agencies exist.
I know, but I'm saying, like, look, if they can set up if they can set up stuff like they've done in the past for them, I think they could come in and be like, look, our fake IRS branch will come in and or our fake uh, uh agencies that we have will go ahead and take care of the damage. That way we don't have these people
Look
figuring
at
out that these people are spies and stuff. Because somebody's going to
think
figure
of
it out.
think of how much money in sales are going to be lost over the weeks or so that this stuff is shut down.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's that part they're on the hook for.
You know, people who are going to be without a job for weeks while this whole stuff is shut down. Um, they're going to need crime scene cleanup because there's blood all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I wonder if there's video footage of all this, of all these shenanigans inside the store.
I don't know.
But so they get in there and they decide to have like one last hurrah. Like basically they know they're being tracked and followed. They go in these mega marts and just a massacre ensues. Um, there's kind of a nod to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid when they're in the shack, the little shed there, and they come out. But instead of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where they kind of get mauled down, they managed to take out like 50 people by themselves with a stylized circular gunfight. There's rockets involved and grenades and shotguns being fired off of people's backs and things. And then the movie pretty much ends. It goes back to the therapy session again. So apparently their marriage is better, right? So that's one thing I really didn't enjoy was I thought the ending was just kind of flat. Like I like the therapy session ending of it, but there was no resolution as far as what happened with their competing agencies. I read there was one of the copies of the script which Carrie Fisher worked on because it went around. There was revisions galore to the script, but this was one of the scripts she helped did some doctoring on. One of the revisions that was taken out was at some point there was going to be kind of a finale between Jane's boss, father there, Keith David, and someone who was going to play John's boss, a woman. And there was going to be like a finale gunfight or something between those two groups. And maybe the possibility of finding out that the agency split because those two had been involved with each other at some point. And that's how the two agencies came to be, because they were working together, did whatever, but then they split up, and then that's how two agencies came to be. But then that got shelved for the ending we had. So what did you think of the ending? Where it just kind of gunfight ends, that's it, and then they're in therapy and they're happy again.
Yeah, a little abrupt. I'm not sure how this actually solves anything. Maybe, right? Like they took out, but is there nobody else that would come after them eventually? Like, I guess that's the main question I have.
Or maybe they wasted so many of their people, the agencies are
Or
like,
like, never
okay,
mind,
we've
let
got
them.
enough.
Yeah, we don't have
Yeah.
any problem with them. I don't know. That was I'd say the most confusing part about the ending is it did kind of end abruptly. I think there is stuff they could have cut out if they wanted to add a little longer of a
Because it
ending.
was right at like 2 hours. So
Yeah, yeah. I did like that it came back around, of course, to the therapy, but I do think there could have been a more succinct ending somewhere in here.
all right. So some other quick facts. Jane is going to her first shown kill. She correctly answers the question on Jeopardy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which was Martha Stewart. This was unscripted and spur of the moment on the part of Angelina Jolie, who actually knew the answer to the question on Jeopardy.
Interesting.
Brad Pitt left in the middle of shooting for 3 months to shoot Ocean's 12, right?
Who else were they filming with during that time then?
I don't know.
For 3 months? Usually that doesn't take that long to film a movie for certain things. So just did they just film all of the Angelina Jolie and like her scenes that didn't have him in it during that time? Because that's crazy. 3 months.
All right, so let's go to some alternate casting. Uh, Consider for the role of Mr. Smith, Catherine Zeta-Jones. Nicole Kidman had actually signed on and dropped out.
Huh.
Johnny Depp was originally cast, turned it down after being overworked on other movies he was shooting. So I'm guessing there might have been some pirates in there at some point.
Yeah, definitely during that time. They had filmed 2 and 3 back to back in the early 2000s. So I wonder if he was kind of
He might have
exhausted
been
from them.
exhausted
Yeah.
from those. Johnny Depp, Will Smith was considered for Mr. Smith when they weren't clear if Brad Pitt was going to sign on. They got Brad Pitt, but then he left after Nicole Kidman dropped out, and they didn't find a replacement. Once they signed Angelina Jolie, that's when he came back to the project. Already talked about it. In order to get a wider PG-13 audience, a very steamy sex scene between Pitt and Jolie was cut. It was inspired by a short-lived television series, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, from 1996, starring Scott Bakula and Maria Bello. All right, so let's go to some ratings. IMDb, it's got a 6.5 out of 10. Metacritic, for 41 reviews for critics, it got a 55. And it's a 4.9 user on 43 reviews. Rotten Tomatoes, it's at 60% with 212 critic reviews. And it's at 58% for 250,000 individual reviews. So, I think, like I said at the beginning, this probably wouldn't have been such a big movie had there not been the controversy about the two stars that came out afterwards. That probably got a lot more people to go see it. So for me, I'd give it a 3.5. I think there was some good things in it. I thought some of the action scenes were good. As I'm watching this now, the ending was just way too abrupt.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it would just, I never really picked up on that before, but it was just like, okay, we killed a bunch of dudes. Let's go talk to a therapist. And then that was it. But there was no resolution as far as what happened with either or both agencies. Like, are they still alive? Are they still assassins? Did they just go back to work? Did they start their own agency? Did the agencies merge?
Right.
There was talk for a while about a sequel, like an actual sequel starring the two of them. But it was either Kinberg or Liman said he didn't want to do it, or they couldn't do it because part of this, he said part of the thing with this movie was them falling in love all over again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was one of the big things about the movies. They fell in, like, they learned that they really did love each other, and they fell for each other again. Once that's gone, what do you have? Granted, they're still in love, but unless they're working together, like on something, I mean, I think there's some things they could have done with a sequel. Like I said, maybe the agencies merge, maybe they work together, maybe they start their own agency. Maybe one of them gets kidnapped or something happens, and the other has to go rescue the other one, right? But
then it just kind of becomes an action movie that has no hook, is the thing.
But that was going to be my thing. Then it just becomes your typical action movie at this point. Like, there's no, like, the premise of this initially is great. Two people are assassins who don't know each other are assassins, have been living together for 5 or 6 years, right?
Only thing I can think of is that if they did have, like, if they wanted to do one now, which they can't because these two are not going to act together anymore. But
oh yeah, that's not.
If you had it like their teenage kids find out about this, and it's almost an adult Spy Kids type of thing, where like, where, because then you have the again where like, okay, somebody doesn't know, and that is the key hook, I think. But I don't know.
But see, that goes right along with, and I know you said you've never seen it, True Lies.
Yeah, call it The Smiths. And it's
So
like
th-
all of the
so
kids.
like people
Jack
have
and
wanted a
Jill.
sequel. People have wanted a sequel for True Lies for years because so it's Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jamie Lee Curtis, and they have Eliza Dushku as their daughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Arnold is Arnold Schwarzenegger's partner. So uh, Schwarzenegger's a spy, right? Harry Tasker. His wife doesn't know that she does whatever he does, but she's starting to get bored in the marriage. So she ends up getting catfished by a dude who says he is a spy, who's actually a used car salesman, right? I think it's like Bill Pullman. Um, so Schwarzenegger sets up this whole thing to kind of give his wife some sort of excitement, and then she actually gets captured by terrorists.
Mm.
And then he gets injected with at some point with sodium pentothal, true serum, and he tells her the truth that he's a spy, right? But then chaos ensues, all this other stuff. He rescues his wife, but they kidnap his daughter, Eliza Dushku, and they have a nuclear weapon off the coast of the Florida Keys. And they go save his daughter. They kill the terrorists. All this is great. But now the whole family knows. And then in the end, it turns out where it's kind of shown that she was, like Jamie Lee Curtis at least, is kind of joining in the quote unquote family business.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And obviously his daughter now knows as well. So maybe there was a chance of his daughter knowing. And especially as Eliza Dushku got older and she started doing some action stuff with Buffy and a couple of the other Joss Whedon things that she's done, where she's done a lot of action things. They're like, oh man, now you have this whole family of spies that you could, but they never. It's James Cameron, so maybe he'll revisit in like 10 more years. I don't know, but they just never got around to it. But now you're treading into the water that people wanted for that. And not saying it would be bad, but yeah, you have this whole family that you could. So what say you, Jordan? What's your thoughts? I have an idea of where you're going to put it.
Okay. We'll see. We'll see. I had this as a 3 out of 5. I probably could have been a little harsher with a 2.5. I have to dock points for the ending. I dock a little bit of points for the confusion of why these two agencies would work together on this if they don't even like that they're married. So there's little things like that. That got me. So I think most of that's probably on the script. If you look at Simon Kinberg's filmography, it's very hit or miss. Like, he wrote one of the best X-Men movies in Days of Futures Past, and he writes one of the worst X-Men movies with Apocalypse and
Dark
stuff, and
Phoenix.
Dark Phoenix. Yeah, so you're like, I don't know what I'm getting from him this week. And there were some things I liked. I liked the opening, right? I liked the general plot idea. But from what I remember of seeing trailers, I thought this was going to be better than it was.
Well, there was a bunch of stuff that was that they made for the trailer, but that wasn't in the movie.
Oh,
like
really?
I think they actually showed Keith David in the trailer a couple times. That was something I read on IMDb too. There was a bunch of stuff that was done specifically for the trailer that had no part in the movie, was not around, but to kind of give it maybe a different feel. So I don't know.
Yeah, so that's where I end up with it. If I'm buying it in a bargain bin, yeah, probably $5. I don't know if I would though, just because I don't know if I see myself really ever revisiting this. I'm very curious for the TV show because I want to see what it can do with a little bit of a different twist of it, and I definitely want to check that out.
Yeah, so for anybody listening who hasn't seen, Amazon Prime has a Mr. and Mrs. Smith TV show, starring
Donald Glover
and Maya. I can't pronounce that. Erskine. Erskine.
I believe it's Erskine. Yeah.
Erskine. I don't know. The reviews for it are pretty good. The premise on that is that they are two spies or two assassins that work for competing agencies that are forced to get together to act like a married couple for missions or something, right?
And then probably fall in love. So that is the
Some people are saying the chemistry there is pretty
Yeah.
good too. That's something I've seen. There's talk about a season 2 already. Um, so this may be something I may check out in the next couple of weeks
I'll probably wait for
just
it
to
all
kind
to
of
be
figure it out.
done.
I don't know if it dropped all at once or if it's a week to week thing. So
Yeah, I don't know either. I would probably wait for it to all drop for me if I'm going to. They all dropped. They all dropped on February 2nd, actually. So you
yeah,
can
I was
wait.
gonna say I'm on IMDb site right now. I can just look it up. Yeah,
Eight
they all dropped at
episodes.
once.
So that might be something to watch.
So just looking at the audience ratings for these for each episode, right? 7.5 out of 10, 7.3, 7.5, 7.6, 7.6, 7.5, 7.1, 7.8. I think IGN gave the whole season like a 9.
Mm-hmm.
Um, obviously, ratings are subjective. Everyone has whoever rates whatever media they choose, whether it's games or movies or TV shows, everyone has their own websites they go to or people that they know what they're getting when they hear a rating from that person or
Yeah,
that
yeah.
website, right? And you kind of know whether that person or that website's off. They have the same taste and sensibilities as you do. So, check it out. I think I might check it out, though.
All right.
I figured you would have given it a 2, maybe a 2.5 at the most.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was probably close to that. I think I gave a little bit of uh a little bit of leeway on stuff. But I don't know. I feel like I liked it more when we were talking about it here. So I think that's why I really solidified the 3 instead of a 2.5. Just kind of talking.
I'll still say, for me, the dinner scene is still one of my favorite scenes in movie history. I don't know, just that whole.
Right. There's some scenes that sell it, really sell the concept, and you're like, oh, this is great. And then there's some scenes where you're like, oh, I can, whatever.
Look, the ending shootout where they're just like ducking rockets and moving around in a circle, and
Mm-hmm.
Angelina Jolie's bending over because she's got a shotgun on her back so Brad Pitt can fire it at some dude, and like they're just literally facing each other. Then they go back to back to shoot people in a circle. I'm like, okay, this is a little ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So are we ready to talk about what we are doing next week?
Let's do it.
All right. So
Or next time.
next time, yeah, sorry, 2 weeks from now. Where are we going? We are Casey, I know you're a fan of this franchise. I see you wear the shirt every a lot of times, the video game shirt of this franchise.
That video game was kind of underrated. It wasn't too
I
bad.
know, I really liked it. It was supposed to be the third one, if everything had worked out. If people don't know what we're talking about at this point, we are talking about Ghostbusters. So Casey's never seen Ghostbusters Afterlife, the newest one that came out. By the time this episode releases, we're going to be in the month of Frozen Empire coming out. And I think that's where we're going to go with it. We're going to watch Afterlife. Currently not really streaming anywhere. I think it's on the Stars thing as well, which look, let's be real, nobody has it. So if you are going to watch it, it's going to be a rent or purchase. I can't believe this is not on a huge streaming service right before a sequel comes out. This is the biggest. I don't understand
That's
situation.
the thing. They have another one coming out, like, what, in a couple weeks, a month? Like, what is
March,
going on
yeah,
here?
a month. It's crazy. But it is what year is that? 2021, 2022 that Afterlife came out.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to getting your opinion on that. Um, yeah.
I'll be honest, I'm looking forward to it too. The trailers for it, I saw it when it came out. The had trailers had me intrigued, right?
Had a
Because
very Spielberg feel. The trailers.
it didn't hurt that I don't know the actor's name, but you had the kid or the guy from Stranger
Yes,
Things,
yeah,
which had the 80s. They already had the 80s vibe going with that, and he one of their seasons was like a Halloween themed or something. He dressed up as a Ghostbuster anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So yeah, the whole it kind of the vibes were flowing with that, and it was just like it was almost like it was meant to be. Um, but the first two are great. I mean, I I remember being a kid seeing the first two,
Hmm.
and I loved the real Ghostbusters
Cartoon.
cartoon. Yeah,
You know what's getting me really excited about Frozen Empire is Camille Nanjiani, who is in the movie as well, said that I think it was him or Patton Oswalt, one of them, I think it was Camille, that said that they were really aiming for the real Ghostbusters type of feel for Frozen Empire. So like that makes me really excited for the movie.
look, I saw I texted you the other day after the second was it the second trailer came out? Is it the
Yeah,
second
yeah,
one? After the second trailer came out, asking if you've seen it. I don't know why I asked because I'm pretty sure
yeah.
I was like 99.99% positive you had seen it. I don't know how that would have came out and you hadn't seen it,
I
right?
went to the theaters. Yep.
But uh so like I saw it was trending and then I was on one of my breaks and I pulled my phone out and I watched it and I was like, wow, I really might want to watch this movie. Like I might go back into the movie theater to watch this one. Then I started thinking like, oh man, I probably got to watch the other one first. Um, and I mean, there's, you know, Murray's back in the newer one. Aykroyd's back. Uh, Slimer's back.
Mm-hmm.
The the skeleton face ghost or the old lady or whatever
Yes, from the library, right?
is, or at least it looks like her's back. I think the government dude from the first or second one, the EPA guy, one of
The
those
man that
guys,
has no dick. Yes, he is in it. Yeah.
he's back and he's still the same
He
dude.
looks
And
exactly the same. Yeah.
it's 40 years later, but he's still the same dude because he's working in a government position still, and he's like, and I hate to say it, but the dude was kind of right, man. Like, like, there's definitely some stuff that the government would need to regulate with some Ghostbusters with proton packs
Yeah, yeah.
and various other things going on. Like, can't be carrying around like nuclear devices like that just driving on the street with no protocols and things, shooting lasers and crossing streams and stuff.
Yeah, but I'm really excited for it. I think the trailers look great. I think it's going to be better than Afterlife, which I enjoyed anyway. So I am hey, what if we do this too? Maybe not for this podcast, but our podcast network Logjam is trying to branch out into more stuff that doesn't have to fall under some of our umbrellas. What if you go see Frozen Empire, we talk about it, and then I put it up on the main Logjam channel, which I'm trying to get launched.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, because I'm gonna go see it. So
I'm just I never realized this until I heard it the other day from the great words of Paul Rudd. Bustin' makes me feel good.
I just love Paul Rudd. I'm so glad he's in this franchise as well. So.
How does the dude look almost younger than when he was in Clueless, for Christ's sake?
I know. I know. Have you seen Wet Hot American Summer and all those spinoffs?
No, no, I haven't.
Oh man, he's so good in that too. I'll have to add that to the list. Okay. So we'll wrap up here. So next time, which is in 2 weeks, we're going to be dropping Ghostbusters Afterlife. I think during that time, we're both going to be revisiting the first two Ghostbusters
I'm
as well.
starting today, as a matter of
Oh,
fact,
nice.
with at least one of them, maybe both, because it's only 12:30 here in California. So
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. I'll have to definitely going to go watch these throughout the next 2 weeks here, so that way I am prepared for our discussion and prepared for Frozen Empire. You can
and
send. So go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just got the new one on disc yesterday. So I got the HD, the UND or whatever it is. So
Yeah,
yeah, UHD. So
I forget if I
yep.
have the 4K or if I have the normal Blu-ray, but I'll check. Well, that wraps us up. Send in your feedback to all the social medias that are in the show notes and in the YouTube description below if you're watching on YouTube. I know we have like 30 some subscribers on YouTube now, so we appreciate that. Give us your
Thank you,
thoughts
everybody.
on any of those movies. Just comment below. Um, you can suggest movies too. Now, if we've already seen them, then we just won't do those. We'll tell you. But like, if it's one that you think we haven't seen, go ahead, type it in. We'll figure it out. Yeah, have a great rest of your week. We'll catch you next time talking Ghostbusters Afterlife.